Have you had the Trader Joe's gingerbread coffee, like ground coffee they make? It's
No.
very good. And I'm not like a crazy like coffee enthusiast for like I'm like this bean comes from this region in South America, but it has such a lovely blend of spices in it in the ground coffee. It's just like drinking a cup of Christmas.
That's lovely.
I
I have to
recommend.
try that. I miss making coffee in the studio.
I miss going to school.
This meeting is being recorded.
Hello and welcome to News from the Real World, where we take a look at the top 10 articles generating comments from this past week. I'm Hannah. I'm a third-year sound design grad.
I'm Evan. I'm a first-year scenic design grad.
I'm Izzy. I'm a second-year scenic design grad.
And I'm Grace. I'm a first-year costume design grad. And we'll just go ahead and jump right into our first article. It is titled Pitt Tightens Student Restrictions After Case Spike Prepares for Winter. And this is written by Sarah Schneider on November 11th. So it breaks down the uptick in cases that Pitt has seen over this last weekend. I guess there are at least 40 new cases confirmed. And since Friday, 73 students have tested positive. They're saying that a lot of these cases are tied to Halloween gatherings, which I think doesn't surprise anyone. Also, the colder weather, which causes people to want to gather indoors together. And since August, 442 students have tested positive, and 110 students as of now are currently in isolation. The school states that students have been pretty good about wearing masks correctly, and they've been good at contact tracing, but clearly they've still got some cases. A lot of the student comments mention how they are surprised that CMU doesn't have more cases, which I sort of agree with because we have a large group of people here on campus, but Pitt's student population is much larger than CMU, so it is more likely that they will have more cases, just proportionally. And they also mention how they are frustrated that these students are putting everyone else in this community at risk because we've got so many universities in Pittsburgh. So, I think these cases are only going to keep going up, especially with a couple major holidays coming up this winter. But I will say, as a student of CMU, I feel like I'm proud of the students for having done so well so far. I don't think we've had any quote unquote like outbreak the way that Pitt has. And I feel like the school is really good about taking the preventative measures to make sure that we're all safe on campus and off.
I was so impressed by the school offering not just arrival testing at the beginning of the semester, but departure testing, because presumably if you're departing, it's not going to affect the school if you catch the virus while you're home. But I appreciated that they recognize that people getting sick at home is still a problem for the school.
Yeah. It's the culture of the school too. A giant state school versus the private nerd college that we happen to go to. So I'm not surprised that we've been doing a little bit better of a job. But
yeah, and I've been thinking a lot too about like how it's going to be affected differently in places that have winter, because I'm out in Los Angeles and it doesn't really affect businesses if they can't dine indoors or if they can't have events inside the building. Whereas as winter comes, like people aren't going to be okay with not being able to go inside and not being able to hold things outside. So I'm glad that they're kind of being ahead of it and aware that they need to take it more seriously.
A lot of people are like mentioning they're like the virus is way worse now back when I was like disinfecting my groceries or back when like we weren't allowed to dine indoors, and now like obviously restaurants and cafes and places like that are all open with like dine in everything. And I stopped by a coffee shop this morning and it was pretty spacious and I just was picking up, but like while I was in there I was just like in the back, there were so many people just, and it looked like a normal Starbucks, like on any given day without a pandemic going on. And I was like, this is insane that it literally every table was full, and like they were barely 6 feet apart, and you had at least 2 people at every table talking. No masks were on. The only people masked were those in line. And I don't know, it's just like none of this feels safe. And a part of me wants to be like, now more than ever, what are you doing? Like it is like literally everyone is like, it is just going to get worse. Like we are at the worst it's ever been. And you still feel safe like going out with a group of friends, and
I think a lot of people are suffering from pandemic fatigue. I heard somebody call it that, where it's like people are just like, enough of this already. And and
there's this
because
balance
things are open now, trying to close them back down at this point or in like a month or so it's going to be impossible. I think things are going to get shut down again late December, early January.
And people aren't talking about it the same way either. Like I'm sure like most of us or a lot of us, I was constantly refreshing all of like the news pages when the pandemic first broke, and the news was always talking about it. And now it's like you have to outsource for information. It's not constantly in front of you anymore, other than people being like, be smart, but you don't get any of the statistics or the rates of death and all that anymore.
It's background radiation at this point.
Yeah. I find myself falling into that trap of just being like not as safe as I was.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think we understand it better, right? Like I think that we know that wiping off our groceries is not as necessary as we maybe once thought it was. But there's this balance we all have to strike between like the human need to have social interaction and the ability to really have a pod that is truly safe and closed, which is difficult. I think it's impossible for most people to truly have a closed pod with just a few people in it.
And if you have a closed pod, not everyone in your pod might include only the people in your pod.
Right. And we're learning now that it's like airborne, right? And so again, like the wiping down of surfaces may not be really as necessary as we think. I mean, we should still do it anyways, because you don't want to get like the flu. But there are still some pretty good, like the New York Times released an infographic of a chart saying the number of cases versus like the mandates surrounding the virus. And of course, the closer you get to less restrictions, the higher the numbers go. And I think right now it's like South Dakota is leading in terms of most number of cases a day. And Pennsylvania is like a little lower down because we're kind of like right in the middle of it all. So I am interested to see what's going to happen in the next month, especially after Thanksgiving. And I'm hoping that a lot of people are taking those precautions and a little bit of self-control to not go to their big family gatherings. Because I don't know about you, but I've been in some classes where some people are like, the whole family's getting together next week. We're so excited. And I'm just like, okay. Yeah. So
my family is 4 people and I'm not doing that.
You see these things going around where someone shares, some Facebook post where someone's like, I will not be afraid of me and my 30 people family is going to be around the table Thanksgiving morning because I'm an American, or, and you have to hope that those people are just a loud minority and they're not, they're not the voice of the American consciousness.
Mm-hmm. And just get tested, because it's so easy to do. Like it used to be really difficult when the pandemic started and you'd have to like wait over 7 days to get results back. But now, like I know people have to get tested for work and they get results back the next day. So like, it just makes sense. Even if you're going home to just like your distant relatives.
There's some tests where you can know in 15 minutes. I mean, it's incredible now.
I was actually kind of surprised how quickly like getting a test through the school was.
Yeah.
It's not pleasant to get the test, but it was done and I got the results the next day.
I will say, having gotten the nose swab flu test earlier this year, because I got the flu in March, having someone else swab you is way more painful than doing it yourself, because you know your body and they do not, and they do not care. They just like shove it up there. And then I was crying, and then they're like, get out of here. And they're like, you have the flu, go away. So,
well, speaking of how the world has changed and how everyone is coping with it. We have this article from BroadwayWorld.com. From classroom to stage, COVID-19 has profound impact on theater education, according to EdTA survey. This was written on November 12th. It talks about this survey that they did out to 11,000 middle school and high school theater educators, and about a little over 2,000 responded. And they talked about how their schools were adapting to not putting on productions and how their finances were being affected as a result. And it seems that in most cases, things are canceled. Most schools are completely shut off from their budgets in high schools and middle schools, and they relied so heavily on their ticket sales and revenue sales, like concessions and other things, to stay afloat and provide for all these things and all their students. So it's really difficult time for them currently. One of the commenters talked about how in their home in Houston, Texas, their high school is not, but most high schools are still putting on all of these shows in person with people there, because it's Texas, and if football is not canceled, nothing is canceled. And that kind of like idea of like fairness to the other students just so football can happen is a little ridiculous in my mind, but I can see why it happens.
Yeah, it's interesting to think of middle and high school theater programs as being primarily self-funding. I certainly was not, when I was in middle and high school, I was not invested in the economics of those programs beyond the degree to which we had to fundraise. You wonder, right? You have to hope that high school and middle school theater, which I think is a lot of how a lot of us got into theater, isn't lost. Like I think someone else said this in student comments, but like we kind of know Broadway's going to come back, right? There's money there, but I think it would be a bigger loss if middle school and high school theater didn't come back.
Yeah, and it's such a cut program already, and it's a privileged experience to go to a school that even has theater at it. And even at my high school, theater was dying out when I was there, and they didn't have any money for anything, and they just charged the students' parents, $300 to be in a show so that they could
pay to play.
Wow.
Pay to play. And so it's just crazy to think about, because that's such a privileged, experience to even be able to afford to do something like that. And if that's the case, how are you going to afford to keep a theater going? Because it's going to take years to recover from not being able to do shows.
Yeah. If the money you make the year before is the budget for next year, and you have to start after a year or two of not doing theater, then you put on Art Town or something, right? Hope for the best, I guess.
Shakespeare, because it's free.
Right, exactly. Cheap shows.
Very devastating.
Pardon?
It's very devastating. I'm just, I don't know what's going to happen to a lot of those programs that don't have the funding.
Mm-hmm.
You have to move to some place like Texas where they put the same amount of money into their football programs as their arts.
But at what cost?
Right.
Millions of dollars, because those places are they're nuts. They're incredible.
I just feel like there needs to be transparency, from them, them being the theaters, why don't you have money? Why are you not able to put it on? And why are other, make it clear where the money's coming from and what you are losing, because that's so sad. I feel like it's super secretive. You have to go do your own research to find out where funding's coming from, especially for sports, and who's backing it.
Sports in most high schools are the money makers, so they don't want to put anything into the arts.
No. To segue us into our next article, a look at the other end of the spectrum of people doing entertainment with money is the production team on Jurassic World Dominion, which is an upcoming Jurassic World movie, apparently. Headline: Jurassic World Dominion used a whopping 40,000 COVID-19 tests during its lengthy production. So filming on Jurassic World Dominion took 18 months total. And over that time, they used 40,000 COVID tests to continually check everybody, cast, crew, actors, that is cast, creative team. They hired a private company to manage their COVID safety. I'm going to read a quote here. The safety included frequent testing, regular temperature checks, walk-through temperature stations, additional hand sanitizer stations and sinks set up around the production, and complex and exhaustive daily cleaning measures. The cast and crew were kept isolated in a hotel in the UK outside of the filming location. So they all lived together. They all stayed together. And it cost the studio between $6 and $8 million to do this.
I just thought of it, and it's all going to go down the drain because they're trying to milk Jurassic Park dry.
I haven't heard of this movie at all.
No, I guess they cut the marketing budget or something, because I didn't know there was a Jurassic Park Dominion. I'm not super keyed into the franchise, to be honest, but like I felt like I knew when there was a new one.
Just doesn't go well. It doesn't, like, having a theme park with live dinosaurs just doesn't go well, and they just haven't figured that out yet.
Right. Yeah, they don't know. They're going to try to win.
I was all set to say this should be the industry standard until you hit me with that price.
Right. God. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's sort of the opposites. It is the opposite end of the spectrum of the theater question. At what cost, right? I mean, they had around 100 positive COVID results over the 18-month run, and those people were able to quarantine and never got checked. But that's the kind of thing. I mean, it's crazy the amount of money that studios have that they're able to spend making Jurassic World Dominion happen. And I'm not trying to say that Jurassic World Dominion isn't worthy of the money.
Well, half the movie CG. How many people do they really need to bring in?
Yeah, we should get rid of actors. I think we should get rid of actors entirely.
Just CG it all.
One of the things I thought was interesting about this is that when they talk about having to live in this hotel, they were like, I think it made the movie better. It brought us closer as people. And like, that probably is true. That these people are like really bonded now because they couldn't talk to anyone else for 18 months.
$8 million friendship.
Yeah. I want a studio to spend $8 million to make me new friends. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, and does that mean they didn't see their partners and children and family for 18 months?
Yeah.
No, well, I have no idea. I mean, because the stars must have been there the whole time. I mean, some bit players wouldn't have been, I suppose.
Well, maybe they just got all of that out of the way, because they're special enough, and then the stand-ins are just like, all right, go stand over there.
Right.
Body doubles.
It makes me wonder if they're going to have a huge premiere, because I think back to Mulan, where they weren't able to have a cinema premiere, so they had to charge people to watch it from home, a higher price. Mm-hmm. Because when you spend that much money on COVID testing, you have to make up for it somewhere. So they clearly feel confident that they're going to kill it in the box office.
Right. Without
30 was steep.
Blockbuster movie release.
Yeah, $30 for Mulan was steep, because I remember when we first kind of entered this pandemic and a lot of movies went straight to streaming. Mm-hmm. And I watched the movie Emma on demand, and that was pretty fun. And it was $20 to rent, which I was like, you know what? That's still cheaper than going to the movie theater.
It's how much are movie tickets? How many years has it been since I've gone to see a movie?
They're they can be up to, well, if you live in a city, it's $15 a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my head, whenever I go to the movie theater, I think it's $6.50, because that's how much it used to be when I went to the movie theater. So every time they charge me $19.50 for a ticket, I want to cry.
2002?
Yes. In Michigan.
Yeah, I think the tone of the article is very much will it have been worth it? And I think it's difficult to split hairs about what art is worth it and what art isn't worth it. But
the logo has informed us that Wonder Woman 1984 is going to be on HBO Max.
Huh.
Except people are going to want to watch that.
I want to watch that.
I mean, people will watch Jurassic Park. They will, because, it's a franchise. Star Wars could release anything and everyone would watch it at a drop of a hat.
Okay.
Is Chris Pratt in this Jurassic Park movie? Because if not, it's going to tank.
Chris Pratt is in this movie. So is Jeff Goldblum. So is Laura Dern.
Okay, good.
So it's got,
Oh, and
yeah, it's
all
got
they
the
needed
gonna-
was
it's
Jeff
gonna
Goldblum.
make it.
power. We're good. And I
Yeah,
won't
they gotta-
rant about how Disney made a travesty of a Lego Star Wars holiday special.
I saw that.
I was going to say, Hannah, there's truly no possible way to segue to our next article from what you've set up for me.
Can we get like
Do
a
it,
little
do it,
like
do a clean edit, just say, and the next thing is or whatever.
Sorry, I need to
Okay.
give me a second to call down.
You're like 6-year-olds are going to eat it up, and I'm like, anyway,
you know what else 6-year-olds are gonna eat up? Not this next article.
not this next article.
No.
Please turn their ears away. Okay,
I'm not
so
ready
for our
yet.
next article,
I'm not ready yet.
We'll give you a moment.
Okay.
I
I'm
just thought that's
crying.
the-
Give me a sec.
well, that's topical for the next article.
In case you're just joining us now, Hannah's crying because of Legos Star Wars.
That's the cold open.
Okay, so for our next article, it's called Broadway Stagehand Falls to Death, Restoring Theater Following the Departure of Beetlejuice. And the article is written by Greg Evans on November 12th, and it is sadly announcing the news that a 54-year-old stagehand fell off of scaffolding inside Broadway's Winter Garden Theater. It was originally thought that it was while putting away props for the Beetlejuice musical exiting to clear out before the Music Man takes over. But as the investigation has gone on, they found out that it was during like routine maintenance in between the shows. So it's not associated with Beetlejuice in any way. The New York Police Department and OSHA arrived on the scene to start an investigation and discovered that he fell off of a ladder during maintenance and there's no criminality suspected. I said that, but it was interesting because a lot of the student comments were talking about the part of the article where they said he was found without his helmet on, any hard hat. And somebody working in the building actually was there when the incident occurred underneath the scaffolding and heard the incident take place and then like discovered the scene. And a lot of the reports were talking about he probably wasn't wearing a helmet at all. In the article, his coworker said, "Oh, I'm sure he was wearing a helmet. It must have fallen off upon impact. He was always wearing a hard hat." But I've just been in the middle of doing my OSHA 10 training online. And it was just really interesting hearing them talk about all of these types of incidences and the likelihood of you being injured if you're doing all the proper safety precautions. And something a lot of the student comments were talking about was that why was he alone on the top of scaffolding? Like that doesn't seem very likely. And the biggest one is why was there not a like a harness or I don't know the proper name, but like a fall cord that attaches you to the scaffolding, because over a certain height, you're not supposed to be freestanding on a scaffolding. So the investigation is still ongoing to figure out like if there is somebody at fault or the resources and PPE there, or was it like a decision by the individual to go up there without being properly prepared?
The article seems confused about what actually happened because I think we just don't know at this point, and it's tragic. And I don't think we can underline that enough. But the article, like the first 3 sentences that refer to the accident, describe it differently every time. The article's like up in the fly loft, and then on a ladder, and then the third sentence on a scaffolding. It's like, what? Well, not all of them, surely.
Yeah, it's all over the place. And I don't know if that's because the investigation is ongoing, but it also feels like they're getting a lot of conflicting information. It almost feels like people that worked with him were trying to like protect like that, oh, he was prepared, he would never do this. It also makes me wonder, like, he's been in the industry for such a long time and is working in a very unionized OSHA theater. So it's surprising to me that he would be so ill prepared. So there's a lot of like unanswered questions.
Mm-hmm.
Some
But
people
it
just
is
get so
terrifying.
salty that, they think they're better than their OSHA standards, so they don't follow them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You just
Yeah,
get
'cause
lax, right? I mean, it's the lack of accountability if there was only one other person there, right?
Well, and not even watching them, like one other person doing something somewhere else in the theater, which seems, I don't know what the OSHA standards are, but that seems like maybe it should not be what they are.
Yeah, and it made me feel a lot better reading the student comments where everybody was saying like, wow, this is so unlikely to happen if you have the proper gear. And everybody who was commenting seemed to understand what was expected of them if they were going into that situation. So that makes me happy that people like hopefully moving forward, this happens less and less, because like there isn't a stigma of like being safe isn't cool, because I feel like that kind of used to be a thing when I was younger working in theaters, where you'd be embarrassed if you're wearing a helmet because you kind of look like a dork. Whereas now it's like you're cool if you're wearing a helmet because you're not an idiot. So it gave me some positivity to read the comments.
And proper rigging. Kids are all about that these days,
They are all about that.
which is
I
great.
feel like a
We
million
endorse that.
carabiners and knots and things, or keys. I've seen
They
it.
like publicly shame. Have you seen those articles where people like publicly shame people who have like done some terrible, like thrown together rigging that's so dangerous? And like it's usually like professionals or like students who can like immediately point out everything they're doing wrong. I support that culture.
There are entire forums made to
Mhm.
making fun of people who violate OSHA standards.
Well, I guess that's our silver lining of this story, is that like it seems like the next generation is going to be even more safety conscious, which is
Mhm.
preventable stuff like this shouldn't happen. Our next article is also about Broadway, but asks the question I think we've all been asking for the past 6 months. It's called "Will the Vaccine Mean Broadway Will Come Back Early?" It's from the producer's perspective, which is Ken Davenport's blog. It's written by Ken Davenport, who's a Broadway producer. He says, this isn't a quote, he writes, following the news of Pfizer's vaccine, Anthony Fauci says that the average American could have access to the vaccine by April 2021, making a summer reopening for Broadway possible. He urges caution on a few counts. He says the vaccine still needs to be approved. People need to actually take it, and not take it. In cases are rising right now, it's hard to imagine restrictions lightening while cases are rising. And Broadway relies on tourists for 65% of ticket sales. So some shows may have to wait longer or do fewer than 8 shows a week, and have like a soft or sort of half reopening on the way to a full reopening. The student comments primarily focused on reminding us that having a vaccine won't end the virus overnight. I think there's going to be a long period where there's a vaccine that exists and we're still dealing with the virus popping up in pockets. I don't know how much you've read of Ken Davenport's stuff. He's been blogging like this for a long time. The tone of the article is weird because he is like urging caution, and at the very end he's like, but the person who gets there last is gonna have less money, so you need to be ready to open any time. And it's like, that's not both things. You can't say both things. So the message that I think we should take is the cautious one and not the racehorse one.
I think that I'm pretty sure that even if we have a vaccine, and right now there's multiple vaccines, at least there's 2 right now that are above 90% effective. And the only way we're going to have summer Broadway openings is if the vaccine is approved and is distributed tomorrow, because it's going to take months.
Yeah.
Well, will there be a thing where, because I don't know how this will work with like privacy and like how law and like your own security will play into this, but will it be a thing that you have to have like a card that proves that you've been vaccinated, and they'll let anybody in who's been vaccinated? Because
people were wondering where this at the beginning of the pandemic, if there was going to be some sort of like way to track people who did or did not have it. But I haven't seen anyone. I mean, there's not a large governmental plan, right? So it's hard to imagine anything like that happening.
I find it hard to imagine this government having any kind of plan currently for the next month and a half.
60 days.
But I think I doubt they'll be able to get away with anything like that. I think it's just going to be one of those things where people who are responsible will do it, and that's why it's going to take months and months for it to open everything and all the cases to go down. But I imagine it'll just be like all your other vaccines that you get while growing up, mumps, measles, polio, all that kind of stuff, where it's like you go see your doctor and it's part of your medical history to get it.
I'm hoping that maybe this opens some more opportunities for filming theater, though, right? Because like theaters are doing it. I mean, shows are doing it anyways right now, and trying to create and maintain these bubbles and like making and testing everyone. But it's like once you introduce, I think, a vaccine into that, maybe a group of like 50 people, doing a project like that. Like I feel better about than like them performing it and then adding hundreds of people into an audience every night.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, think of how much money Jurassic World Dominion could have saved.
$6 to $8 million.
Right, right.
I do not want to know their budget. I'll cry.
Yeah, God no.
Their budget is yes.
Yeah.
I read a check with yes on it and handed out. I want Broadway to come back the right way when it does come back. Of course, you want people to be safe. I mean, I think this is the thing. I mean, theaters keep looking around. I see some people on Facebook being like, if people can sit in church, if people can sit in restaurants, why can't they sit in a theater? And the thing is, I think a lot of us feel like one death is too many, and and I don't want to be reading news articles in the summer about people getting exposed to Broadway theaters.
Mm-hmm.
Not if it means a whole nother shutdown, a whole
Right.
nother year of this.
Yeah, and a lot of people are talking about how the coronavirus was rampant in Broadway theaters right at the beginning of the pandemic because everyone's in close quarters, amongst actors and crew.
Well, we all know those seats don't hold normal 2020 sized humans, so
That is true. They're very narrow.
they're very small. Have your knees ever like hit the front
You'll be
seat?
like walking through the aisle, like, excuse me.
Right. I always end up with my knees
Pushing
in
by.
front of
Yeah, I was
me.
about to say, Grace, if your knees are hitting, how are Evan's doing?
Yeah, no, God, no. I've definitely been in some theaters where I'm like, oh, I couldn't sit in that seat, right? Like I just wouldn't fit.
For context,
Yeah,
I'm 5'5" for the viewers at home who've
I'm
only
6'.
seen
Yeah.
me.
How
I'm
tall are you, Evan?
5'2", and I've had some troubles.
How tall are you, Evan?
6'6".
Whoa.
Dang.
Really?
I'm 5'11", and I usually have some problems.
I will say, this is a tangent, but the energies that everyone gives off on their screen, Izzy, I thought you would be taller, and Evan, I did not think you would be that tall. Hannah, you're kind of in that range. You give off good 5'11" energy.
I thought Evan was like maybe 6'1", 6'2", maybe 6'3".
Yeah.
6'6". Holy hell!
Nope.
Yeah, I constantly forget that I'm short, and then I walk by a mirror, and somebody will be next to me and be like, what? Is that what people see? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But a positive thing that has come out of the pandemic is that people have had all this time to like reflect upon the world, and a lot of positive change is starting to be initiated. And this next article is all about Milk Paint by Nina Malkin. And for a long time, we've been talking about how to make theater more sustainable, specifically from a scenic design and scenic application standpoint, because it is such a traditionally wasteful form of art in like film and in theater. And this article is exploring milk paint. And this was a fan favorite in the comment section because people were freaking out about just the title, like what the hell is milk paint, or what a great title. And apparently there's rising popularity in milk paint, and it's been found in artifacts in Egypt and in colonial furniture. So it's been around for a long time. And it's now having a resurgence with sustainable artists because of its non-toxic ingredients. And it's essentially, it comes in a powder form, and it's milk protein casein with some like powdered lime and then color pigments added in. And you add water to it, and it activates and has a chemical reaction where like the lactose in the milk creates this thick consistency. And when it's wet, it actually has a milky odor to it, but when it dries, it's completely odorless. It's less convenient because it comes in a powder, you have to mix it yourself, and it's more expensive, but it's long lasting. And the other con is it has a short shelf life, but people are drawn to it because apparently it has this like matte antique finish, like a chalk paint, which is also like very popular right now. I'm sure you've gone to like an antique shop before COVID and saw everything's painted with chalk paint, and that's what milk paint does as well. So the article starts off talking about all this, and then it ends with how you can actually make it yourself at home. So I just thought it was an interesting article about something.
Is this the new
you'd
bread
never
craze?
think of. Yes. Oh my gosh. And
Do they offer like an oat milk alternative? An oat milk paint alternative?
we are only a couple years away, I'm sure.
Well,
I
yeah,
have that
so if it
vegan-
uses like milk protein, I guess in terms of like environment, like sustainability, like what does that mean?
Right.
But
How to source it from somewhere.
right. But also like if you're eliminating toxic metal, I don't know a lot about like scenic painting, but like even just like in regular painting, if you can eliminate those toxic metals and stuff, it's overall better for the environment as well.
The article does seem to suggest it's greener. One student I thought really smartly pointed out. I think I can find the comment. The the fact that you have to refrigerate them causes an environmental cost from running refrigerators and adding refrigerators. And if theaters um, had to switch to milk paint, not only would they have to have refrigerators to store it, but also you can only use it for like a few days before it goes bad. So you'd have to have artists, really work crazy around the clock to use up all the paint, or be mixing it as they go.
Yeah, I think you have to like mix it as you go, which is difficult to color match it exactly. And I'm wondering, the article doesn't go into this, so it's kind of like me making assumptions, but I wonder if there is like an aftermath recyclable, eco-friendly part where, since you're not having harmful chemicals on it, maybe you can do more with it afterwards, or you can recycle it easier. You don't have to worry about putting all like the cat litter in the paint tubs to then dry out, to throw in the trash, to then send that to the waste dump. But it is like an interesting question on like, is it, yes, it's more eco-friendly, but are there other negative caveats to it?
Yeah,
especially when you think
trade-off in like speed and efficiency will make it unpalatable to like large theaters.
And that's what's interesting, is that I think the people who could make this work would be a large theater because they have the money and resources for these like issues with it. But then when you think of it, like large shows last for a long time. And so if this isn't a sustainable long-term option, then they're not going to be the ones to do it. And smaller theaters are less likely to invest in milk paint.
So does it say how long the paint lasts when it's actually like painted on?
It says it's long lasting once it's applied and dried, because it has this like powdery finish. So like all the moisture is absorbed.
But it's like a few days, right? You said the shelf life is,
Yeah, for what?
So you'd end up throwing away a lot of product.
Yeah. I mean, I know theater companies that hold on to gallons of paint for years, it seems like, seemingly. So.
But it's just another step forward, things to be optimistic about. Comparing it back to milk alternatives, I find it funny when people are very hypocritical or very critical of like almonds, like the amount of water almonds need. I'm like, yeah, but it's still like less than what cows need, right? And cows are like, much more. But anyways,
you reuse that water though,
right. And yeah, it's every alternative we can come up with is a step in the right direction, I think. So
I think because things aren't perfect, people don't want to take the chance on new ideas in certain ways, and that kind of stuns ourselves.
Yeah, and there's like this new movement. It's like a side rant that I don't get into, but it's called like eco-exhaustion or eco-anxiety. And like that's kind of, our generation's thing now, is being exhausted from everything because it's just like very polarizing. And there's a lot of problems where it's like you try to go eco-friendly and you market yourself as like, we're the eco-friendly theater, I'm the eco-friendly person. So then you can't make any mistakes. Like everyone's gonna be like, oh, you're using milk paint, but did you know that it's bad for these reasons? That it's just like you can never win. Mm-hmm. So I'm just like excited that there's other options, and hopefully we'll like continue to pursue them without like picking apart the innovation.
Yes, I don't mean to be a negative Nelly about everything.
We've taken off our cynical hats. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Speaking of other things that are white like milk, let's talk about Maya Rudolph's white Kamala Harris pantsuit on SNL. So that's the name of the article posted on Pop Sugar by Sarah Wasilek on November 9th. So as we all know, I'm sure a lot of us have seen the screenshots or video clips of that SNL skit where it was filmed 3 hours after Biden and Harris's speech, where most notably Kamala Harris is wearing a very stylish white pantsuit with a like an ivory off-white silk pussy bow blouse, which, while it is a bit of a double standard to talk about, like to specifically talk about, a female politician's clothing, I think she has been very calculated and very smart about the choices and the things she's saying with what she wears. I think similar to like last week's article with the type of music that these people play at their, campaign events. But basically, SNL had less than 3 hours to recreate this look because it was all done on Saturday night. And the costume designer, Tom Broker, and the wardrobe supervisor, Dale Richards, talked in this article about what they did. And they basically had a member of their team working on each piece of the outfit. So the suit that Kamala Harris wore is designed by Carolina Herrera, and the rest of the items were built or pulled from stock. And interestingly enough, that suit that Maya Rudolph was wearing was actually purchased a year before that, for Cecily Strong to play Melania Trump in a sketch, and it was never used. So yeah, and then the team confirmed that they don't have any contact with Kamala's team, so like they didn't know that that's what she was going to wear. Just because people seem to be very blown away that they could turn it around so fast, which, that's definitely a feat. And all of the student comments were like, that's amazing. It's incredible. I applaud them. Just goes to show like what happens when you invest in, those production departments. Like they can create things and turn around things really fast. There's one comment where they were like, I don't even know why SNL needs to recreate these looks so accurately. And a part of me was like, yeah, that's true. Like you could have put like anything on Maya Rudolph, and she would have talked and done the voice and done the looks, and we would have known that she was playing Kamala Harris. But I think there's something so special and kind of like inclusive in a way. Like it gives the audience this like it's like, yes, we all knew that that's what she was wearing. And it's like kind of like the way that like, because it's fresh in my mind, but with like The Crown, how like they have Diana on the season and she's wearing, they recreate a lot of the same looks that Princess Diana wore. And it's like, I can only imagine that like our parents or whatever who were watching this on the news were like, oh my gosh, I totally remember that outfit. Like it was an amazing outfit. I thought it was so stylish at the time. So yeah, I think, and also like when you recreate Halloween costumes, the ones that we like the most are the ones that are similar enough in color, shape, style, because they're the ones that like we can instantly recognize, and sort of like an inside joke, I think, if you get the reference. And yeah, I do think SNL, their wardrobe department's on point. I know that they've got like a huge warehouse, like a basement, like just storage warehouse type thing, where they're just running down and they've got stuff organized by sizes with each of the actors on the show. But I think what we don't talk about enough is, I don't remember when it was, but they did do the Cinderella sketch a few years ago, where I think it was like Bobby Moynihan or something was playing Gus Gus, and they made him that whole little mouse outfit in like 2 days. And I'm like, that is a feat, because I'm pretty sure it's not as hard to find a woman's pantsuit in SNL's wardrobe department than it is to find a Gus Gus mouse suit fit for a man of that size. So yeah,
I think the SNL sketch would really have been missing something if she wasn't wearing the pantsuit. Like I think that wouldn't have worked as well. I mean, people who didn't see the event that Kamala Harris was at, it's a totally different energy.
And it was a magical moment, because I love SNL, and my favorite segment is always the news segment. So when it's like a political season, I am all about SNL, and my whole family at home, we were like preparing for it. We were making hors d'oeuvres. We were ready to see what SNL brought. And so when we all sat down and saw her walk on stage, and after we had just watched the Kamala appearance, we lost our minds. We were like, how did they do that? So it's fascinating to know that they just like were able to whip it up.
Yeah, I love this.
There's something so powerful in satire when everything is so detail oriented to the truth, that when it takes that step towards absurdity, it still grounds itself.
I do love that they have to specify that they don't talk to Kamala Harris's team. Because how would that conversation even work if they did? Would they?
Hi, we're gonna make fun of you. What are you wearing?
Right.
Well, they had Hillary Clinton on SNL. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's the most, outstretched thing to to suggest, especially like everybody knows there's such a liberal Democrat performance form. So
Lauren doesn't want them to be, which is the funny thing. Lauren really wants them to be like, every American can laugh at these jokes. But I think it's hard.
It'd be too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, SNL, I think, has the resources, right? Because they have, first of all, they're able to film right now with the pandemic and have a new guest every week and have like a different musical guest every week. So clearly they've got the resources. Also, coming from like a theater perspective, if you told me, hey, you have 3 hours to put together a white pantsuit and, a silk blouse, can you do it? I'd be like, well, can I go shopping like right now? Because I don't know how many theaters are going to have a modern stock like that. But like with SNL, they do so many political or just, modern day things that they definitely have like the stock of random formal business casual wear. I did work at a theater where they did contact us once because they wanted to do some kind of like medieval sketch, and they sent over like the actresses' measurements, and they're like, do you have dresses in their sizes? And I think we were in the middle of like doing 2 shows at once, and like with like a shortened build time, and we were just like, we literally don't have time to go look for you. Like, so, and I think they cut it because I tried to watch the episode that week to be like, ooh, I wonder what they did, and there wasn't any like medieval skit, so we'll never know. But I guess they don't have a great period stock. That's where you get them. Kamala needs to show up in like full on like Elizabethan wear. Yeah. And they'll be like,
Speaking of clothing and satire, we have an article here for HowlRound Theater Commons called Anti-Authoritarian Clowning, a tactical review. This was written on the 12th of November by Elam Bogad, who in 2003 joined a group of other artists to don clown makeup and protest against W's visit to the Queen in the United Kingdom. It goes into depth on how they got together and started creating their personas and improving and learning how to play against each other as clowns, because they actually dress up as clowns and go and protest in the streets. There was a great quote from this article, and I need to read this quote from the article. Where'd it go? Give me a second to find it.
Well, while you're looking for it.
Here, I found it.
Okay,
Structural and state racism. This only works in the UK, not the US, and only if almost all of the clowns are white presenting, which I thought was a very sick burn at ourselves here on this side of the pond. They go on to say how they brought themselves back in 2016 to protest against Trump and his authoritarianism, and the UK and their own issues with Brexit. It's very fun using clown makeup and the silliness and absurdity of political theater to make a statement.
I love that they are spreading the word too, that they're teaching other people and creating seed groups of people to join in clownery, because it really sounds like an effective way to combat the seriousness and mood of protests. I want to see clowns at more protests, frankly.
I just don't want to see them in the halls of Purnell ever again.
Oh, what?
Oh.
I'm a first year.
Side note, the junior actors spend one day where they become clowns for the day. They work on their clowns and do all these things that they did in the article for this. And then they run around Purnell acting as these clowns and try to interact with the students. And it's horrifying.
With advance warning, I will be sick that day.
He's come down with something.
Right. I'm not even scared of clowns. It just doesn't sound like a good time. I love this article. I love that they're able to apply it to a really broad range of political situations, and find ways to disrupt things. I love that they're using clown attire the same way that moms were using their own momliness in the protest this past summer, and saying, instead of showing up and saying implicitly, it's bad press for you to hurt a clown, right? I love that's a form of like clown privilege that they've created to help diffuse tension at protests.
All of that was a pull quote.
I love the tone of this article too. It's so fun. I love the final words of it, of the article were,
it takes itself so seriously in the worst way possible. And that's it's just brilliant.
Right. The last two lines of the article read "forward!" exclamation point, and then in brackets honk honk. That's fun.
So cheerful.
I appreciate that you can have fun and still be political. We need that sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's the best place for them, because I've seen a couple, like I've gone to a couple clowning shows or events. I don't know what they're technically called, but there's so much of it that can fall flat because it's like so much like improv without dialogue, and you can kind of get lost. So the cool thing about the politics is that most people are like aware of what they're referencing, and we can piece it all together, and everybody needs to laugh about our politics, especially right now. So I would love to watch this.
Yeah. Get those Cornell actors involved in that. Use it for good.
Yes, not terrorizing.
Right. Get out of Cornell. Go terrorize the government.
That's the new slogan for the CMU School of Drama.
I love that.
Our next article is one of mine. Also talks about the intersection of law and entertainment. It's entitled "Putting Rap Lyrics on Trial is a Violation of Free Speech." It's written by Emerson Sykes and Layla Rafai from the ACLU. So the ACLU is filing what's called an amicus brief in a case in Tennessee where the state is attempting to use a defendant's rap music career as evidence against him in a murder trial. So the ACLU explains in this article that artistic expression is protected as free speech. Supreme Court cases have upheld that irrelevant free speech cannot be used as evidence. So the defendant in this case writes rap songs about gang life, but he himself does not have any particular gang affiliations. And the prosecuting attorney tried to use his songs in court as evidence against him of interest in violence or of murderous feelings. And neither the defendant, the artist, or the victim have any known gang affiliations at all. This article points out that despite it being illegal to do so, prosecutors are more likely to use rap music in this fashion than they would similarly use music in other genres, like country music that talks about murder, which it does sometimes. And this is a form of racism against Black and Latinx people.
You're not going to take "I shot the sheriff" to court.
Exactly. Yeah. It's this. There's this assumption that a primarily white judicial system has made that some people are acting artistically and some people are acting out their true nature. And it is racist.
Yeah, most artists don't only write music about their own intimate experience. They like take on a character. They want to like explore different types of personalities or experiences. And so that's kind of ridiculous. Like you can't prove that at all.
Right. And the ACLU article goes into that the genre that the defendant is writing in is about gang violence. It's just a trapping of the genre.
Yeah, and there's been
implying bias too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of like rap music where it's been proven that like the individual artist is like rapping about things that they don't actually have experience with, or they're like rapping to give themselves some sort of street cred or something that has no actual like basis in their own life. And so it's kind of ridiculous. Like the the genre sort of lends itself to that. And so you can't take it seriously.
Here's an interesting idea. I remember reading once about people who worked on a soap opera. I think it might have been General Hospital for years. And they were like, the actors who worked on it, had the most stable lives. We got all of our drama out on the show, and then we had like really healthy home lives. And I wonder if there could be a study of rappers who rap about violence, if they have more stable lives than some other people.
I don't know. I do remember that Cardi B, she said in an interview that she really wanted to rap about these cars, but she didn't want to be a poser. And so she bought, I don't know what, I'm not a car person, but she bought these like really nice, like Lamborghini, Bentley, I'm sure something like that cars, so that she could rap about them, but she doesn't have a driver's license. And so she's never driven them, but she bought them so that she is not a poser. I just thought that was interesting.
I'm not sure a car you don't drive doesn't make you a poser.
I guess maybe not a liar. You're a poser if you're not a liar.
Yeah, I'm not going to fight Cardi B on this.
Mm-mm. God, no.
All right.
Speaking of structural inequalities, we come to our last article for this week. Exclusion is oppression, from pedagogy to performance. This is an article written by Gregory King for Dance Magazine. It talks about his own experience as a dance practitioner as well as an educator in higher education, in his struggles breaking away from the white Eurocentric history and beliefs that dance is ballet based, and everything you could ever need to know about dance you will learn doing ballet. And not only that, but it's the people. It goes and names a bunch of names of the people he did study, and the names of the people who were excluded, who were, I didn't get a chance to check, but I assume all BIPOC individuals who, were either masters of their craft in ballet and modern, or were pioneers in other, Black-led dance forms. He talks about the kind of mental gymnastics he had to do with one professor who was a Japanese woman who taught him dance in a college setting where she would only teach white dance history and thought, but would always try to push him to act as and like take into his roots. But when he would do so, it was never, good quality choreography because it wasn't white enough. He talks about this acknowledgement of how in most practicums in colleges, ballet is required and modern is required, but most other African or other kind of dance forms are either optional or not even offered. That's kind of sad to see that, we have much work to do.
Yeah, I mean, Africa's a really big place, and it's crazy to realize that I'm not sure I could name an African form of dance.
Well, it's also, modern, like, forms of hip hop dance and of that ilk.
I think it's just like following that narrative that like what we consider classical or what the classics or like the standards are all white and Eurocentric. And yeah, so like this can be applied to like I don't like any kind of like history class you take, right? Or like I'm taking a history of clothing class, and that like I feel like they've tried to make an effort to like help us branch out into other areas, but it's just so hard because like, we talk about Rome for like a week, but then it's like, let's talk about Japan and China in one day. And I'm like, like I can't even wrap my head around the historical context of what's going around on in this time. So
how varied the clothing are in Japan, China, Korea, and
yeah,
from each other, and then from century to century.
Yeah. So
that's what I was thinking too, is like, how can you expect I'm assuming white like dance instructor or white educator to teach these like forms of like history or dance in a less like biased way or a less white experienced way. It really comes to, you need to have, instead of just one instructor coming in, and not even separate courses, but have multiple instructors come in. It doesn't have to be a separate class, but like infuse other people's experiences into it so that it's like a more collective, broader stroke.
And that's the problem, is that these people who are teaching them, they can't teach those other things because they don't know them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it's getting those experts in those areas, or at least people who have that understanding, who can like teach it adequately.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for joining this week for News from the Real World. Everyone have a wonderful day.